Hello there. In this video lesson we're going to show you how you can use some built-in objects, bracelet objects that have been created to make life easy to create jewellery in Fluid Designer for 3D printing. And the one that we're going to use in this particular video is an Enneper curve to make the bracelet shown there. So if you start Fluid Designer up, if you just first of all go to the bracelets folder. Now if I just scroll down the screen using the center mouse button, I'm just scrolling it towards me, you see lots and lots of objects on the screen here. And now many of these, not quite all, but many of these can be used in the same way that we're going to show you in this particular video. Now in this lesson I'm going to use this Enneper curve bracelet, which is 65mm. So if I just drag and drop that onto the workspace, and I'm just going to switch on the Screencast key, so any key presses I make, if I press A for example, oops, not switched it on, I just start the display. So if I press A on the keyboard, you'll see it shown down here. That's the Screencast key, so I'm just holding down the center mouse button and rocking it. So at the moment my bracelet, as you can see, is partly complete, and it's set with an inner diameter, this inner diameter of 65mm. Now if you wanted to change the inner diameter, what you can do is click in here, and if we scroll down we could change the inner diameter to say 55mm. Now that looks different on the screen there because this one that's highlighted at the moment is this object. So if I just switch that from view, and what we're doing is we're actually using this object now. That's the new inner diameter that I've set, inner diameter 55mm. So if I click on the bracelet itself, you can see X inner diameter 55mm, that's this object. So I've just changed my inner diameter to 55mm. So that's setting the bracelet size. I could change the thickness of the bracelet, so if I click on show the curve data information, at the moment the cross-sectional diameter is 1mm. I could change it to say 1mm by 2mm. Now I know if I do that it'll look really pretty weird, it doesn't look very pretty like that. But if I change it to 2 by 1, it actually does look a lot better. So you do have to play around with some of these. It depends on the size of the object and the orientation of the object as to which of these settings will be okay. I'm going to change it back to the default one, which is the cross-section diameter 1. That's a rounded cross-section. So I'll switch it back to that. Okay, so you can change the bevel object, which will change the thickness of the bracelet. One thing to be wary of if you do this is you should always actually look to see whether or not the bracelet goes on the inside of the inner diameter here. Remember I set this at 55mm. If you do change the thickness, it can affect the inner diameter slightly. You can reset that by going to, if you go to view and top view, and if you press the tab key on the keyboard, you'll go into edit mode. Looks like I've got the curve, I've got the inner diameter highlighted instead of the bracelet. Yeah, that's the problem. I need the bracelet selected, and then if I go to view and top view and press the tab key on the keyboard to go into edit mode, let me just close that window down a little bit. This is the error in terms of the inner diameter of the bracelet, because I changed it from 55 to 65. This isn't quite positioned properly now. Now if I just drag that up, it will move too far because the snap feature is on. What I need to do is to line up the bottom of this with the red line. So if I switch the snap off, just move it down, and I want to position it just like that, so it's just in line with the red line there, the x-axis. And if I press the tab key to come out of edit mode now, you'll see that my inner diameter is now in line with the 55 millimeters. You can just see the yellow circle there going around the inside of my bracelet. If I change my bracelet diameter back again, if I change it back to 1 millimeter, you'll see there's a gap there again. So again, we need to change it. So make sure that the bracelet itself is highlighted. Go to View and Top View and press the Tab key on the keyboard to go into edit mode. And what we want to do is to line up the bottom of the bracelet with the x-axis, the red line there. That's okay. And I can switch the snap back on now because I don't want to adjust this anymore. Once you've got it lined up, you just press the tab key to come out of edit mode, and again you'll see that we've got the inner diameter of the bracelet set properly now. Okay, so if you change the bevel object, be careful. It's not quite so critical with bracelets, but if you're working with rings, it is very important that you adjust that inner diameter. Now if I go back to the modifiers icon here, you see that we've changed the bracelet size to a new inner diameter of 55 millimeters. Other things that we could change here is we could change the rows. Well, this at the moment is considered to be one row, so the count, as you can see, is 1. If I click on here and add a second row in, or a third row, you can see what the effect of that is on my bracelet. And also you can see that there's a value setting here of 0.5. That's in the Z direction. Well, the blue arrow is the Z direction. And this is what's called the offset. And if I change that value, you can see that the pattern of my bracelet changes. Now, it is true to say that the more of these objects you've got, the more chance that you may find that the bracelet itself won't 3D print. So that but that does vary from bracelet to bracelet and what patterns you set it up. But the more patterns you introduce here, it can occasionally cause problems in terms of the finished object won't print. So I'm going to actually set the count back down to 1 in this instance. And what I'm going to do is complete the actual bracelet at the bottom here, and we do that by changing the columns. At the moment the value is 10. Well, if I count, well, let me set it back down to 1 actually, and you'll see what 1 is. Yeah, so that's the default pattern. That's the basic Enneper curve pattern. And to create the bracelet, what we're doing is replicating that pattern. And in this case I'm wrapping it around the inner diameter bracelet. And notice I've got also a value here, 0.8, which I could change. This is the relative offset. That changes the pattern as well. So we could have a pattern looking like that. So as you can see, there's a lot of choice that you can make here. Now the more overlapping, the more complicated you make it, you can end up with an object that won't 3D print. So you do need to be aware of that. But generally you will find that these curves will print. Now, when we get to where it overlaps, notice that the pattern here is slightly different from the pattern here. I've gone too big now, and I'm overlapping even more. You don't want to overlap too many times here. You just want to close it. So be careful. Get your count so that it just overlaps. Now you can see if I zoom in, the overlap here and the overlap here is the same, but the overlap here is slightly different, and it's just because of this setting and the size. So you can play around changing this, and if I change it to 0.82, let's just see what happens. Now that's taken it and created a completely different pattern here to the rest of it. Now you might want to do that, or you might want the pattern the same. So instead of 0.82, Let me change it to 0.78 and let's see what effect that has. Okay, so you can see the pattern overlap here has disappeared. So let me try 0.79, and as you can see that's closer to that. It's not quite it yet, so I could try 0.795. Now here you can see we're getting much closer to the default pattern here. So you do need to play around with these numbers if you want it exactly the same. But yeah, I think that looks okay now. So there's my Enneper curve. I've got a thickness, a rounded thickness of 1 millimeter. I've got a count of 14 here, and I've had to change that value. And that object will definitely 3D print and produce that sort of bracelet there. But as you've seen, you can change this pattern and come up with lots and lots of personalized patterns for yourself. Now, once you've got a pattern that you're happy with and it's an object that you'd like to 3D print, remember in Fluid Designer we don't go to File and Save, we go to File and Export, because it's not Fluid Designer files that are printable, it's wavefront object files. So I save that to the desktop, and I'm going to call it, well, it's not a 65mm one, it's a 55mm Enneper curve bracelet. And if I export that file to the desktop, that's essentially my file that can be sent to the printer. But do be aware that you should always check your files with Netfab Basic first before you make any attempt to try and print them. But that's the only other thing you need to do. So we'll just let this file save. And so there you are. That's an Enneper curve bracelet. And as I said at the beginning of this, if I just go to File and New, if we go to Bracelets, lots and lots of these objects down here, not quite all of them, but lots and lots of these objects can be created, bracelets can be created from them in a very similar fashion as to how I've just shown you here. Objects like these white ones, yellow ones don't work in the same way, but all of these grey objects here do. Okay, so that's the end of this video lesson. Enneper curve bracelet in Fluid Designer. Thank you.